like you said correctly, you once served at the Interior Department, and while there are several protests that were organized by the opposition then, and you went for them thoroughly, if you have to recall, including when Raila Odinga was returning. I believe it was in November 2017, and you said that due to clear present and imminent danger of breach of peace, the government notifies the public that for the time being, we will not allow demonstrations within the central business districts of Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kisumu. You don't really stand for protest.
I would make the same statement today because I think, don't read the statement out of context. At that particular time, and even today, when the government raises that matter today, you are free to demonstrate. You are free to go out there and picket and so on. But not in a case where there is a possibility and a likelihood of destruction of property as it were. You see, the difference is this. Gen Z have been saying all along, even from the beginning, that they will have peaceful demonstrations. And they have had peaceful demonstrations. There would be nobody in 2017 who would guarantee us of a peaceful demonstration. In fact, the leaders of the opposition then didn't say we are going to have peaceful demonstrations. They would use a very threatening language every time they are going to have demonstrations. It's a remarkable difference between the reality then and the reality now. The Gen Z would say we are going to have a peaceful, and actually what we saw was very organized, peaceful procession across the towns. What was happening in 2017 was a totally different story, as it were. And you see, as I said, the government has got instruments and machinery to collect information. We had information at that particular time that the nature and the character of that organization was actually going to cause danger to businesses, to individuals, and so on. And by the way, don't forget one thing, Sam. In 2017, when this was happening, in places like in Mombasa, we were already, although we couldn't tell the public this, we were already dealing with terrorist sleeper cells that were alive in most cases. We had a big problem of uprooting Al-Shabaab sleeper cells in the coastal part of our country. That statement was born out of the knowledge and the background information we had about the dangers we were exposed by those sleeper cells. And you know, we were not wrong. By 2018, we were attacked in Dusit. So the statement was made in the context of that it's real that this demonstration could be taken advantage of and so on. Plus again, the organizers were not guaranteeing anyone peace, and they were not coming forward to say, let us organize this thing together with government. So totally different story from the Gen Z.
So if the opposition members didn't feel heard when you were Interior CS, why would Gen Zs trust that they'll feel heard under President Matiang'i?
They never even sought audience. By the way, at that particular time, the opposition never sought audience.
They're expressing themselves on the streets.
Yeah, they never sought audience to be heard about what needed. And then secondly, by the way, what they were protesting about is something that the executive branch of government would do nothing about. You see, if for example you go to an election, you contest an election, and you lose an election, and you are aggrieved about that election, you go to court, and the court rules against you, or rules for you, whatever the case may be. The court rules against you. There's nothing any executive branch of government can do for you. There's nothing a minister can do for you.
But the right to picket is under the Constitution.
But the right of to picket was not the one in contest. We were not contesting the right to picket.
You stopped them.
No, we were not contesting the right to picket. We were just saying, you're free to picket, but we have certain... And in fact, at that time, if I remember very correctly,
yep,
we used diplomats. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but we used diplomats, several leaders from the diplomatic community, to communicate messages that we thought we couldn't communicate in public. You see, like now, security actions that are being taken on terrorist cells and the sleeper cells in the country is not stuff that you can communicate very openly, as it were, because it's intelligence sharing and stuff like that. I remember during that time, we even looked for ways of sharing certain information we thought was very crucial and important to even the security of the opposition leaders themselves at that point in time. So this is their worlds apart, what we are talking about. And by the way, we were, if they had sought audience and said this is what we would do, we would give them audience. As Minister for Interior, I met so many civil society organizations, Amnesty International, anybody who had issues raised with us, we met with them. And we leveled with them. When we had information, we shared. When we didn't have information, we said we didn't have information.
And at that time, in November 2017 particularly, people died. People were shot on the streets. In hindsight, do you have any regrets?
Where people died, let me tell you, where people died and where crimes were committed by police, and then it's time to address this issue. You know, some people forget one thing, and then I hope you will be available for this explanation. The training of our police and the behavior of our police is not cast out, or we don't train police in Kenya to kill citizens. The theory of policing in Kenya is for the preservation of law and order. That does not mean, however, that individual police officers can go above and over the responsibilities that they have. In most cases, that would happen. It's just like in the teaching profession. We do not prepare teachers in our country so that they can have affairs with students and engage in illegal activity. But we are aware that that kind of temptation can happen. That is why, for example, there is a code of conduct for teachers. That's why in the case of the police, we have standing orders. When riots have happened or any security activity across the country, when it has happened, everyone knows and everyone fears, even in the military, when the military are going to act, even internationally, by the way, there are rules of war, there are rules of management of conflict, because people are sued and taken to the international community for breaching even the conventions on war. Same thing with policing. Riots can happen, and they do happen, and they will happen, by the way. And when police are trained to deal with riots and respond to the riots, they are given clear instructions and guidelines on how they're supposed to go. Those who act outside of those instructions, in other words, they act outside of the standing orders, they face the consequences of the law. There are police officers who are in court today for actions they did. There are police officers who have been prosecuted. The question I think you ought to ask is that when we had violations, what did we do? And someone asked me that at the press conference the other day. I pointed out scale and admission. When things went wrong, and we believe in some cases things went wrong, we readily admitted. We actually cooperated with the agencies. I remember in the case of Baby Pendo in Kisumu, for example, the relationship between IPOA, for obvious reasons, and the National Police Service is usually not the best, because IPOA is supposed to investigate the police and so on. We mediated as government. We said we would like to support the investigation in this matter because this has gone beyond what is supposed to be done. So it is in the scale, it's in the admission. Are we standing up to accept when wrongs have been done that they be redressed? The answer is yes. And wrongs can be done anywhere. I mean, whether you look at the teaching profession, medical profession, legal profession, and so on, every organization has got. Why do lawyers punish people? It's because they know that you can be tempted to take clients' money. And there are lawyers in this country who have actually taken clients' money, and they have been punished because of that. So we can't come up and say we are punishing the Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya and we think the Attorney General is wrong because during his tenure so many lawyers took clients' money. That is not the case, because did the Attorney General stand up to what they were supposed to do? In my view, if the answer is yes, that is it. So I can't take responsibility. Did I stand up and say where officers have committed crime, they need to face the law as it is?
Yet, of course, the police were out to quell those protests because of a statement you had made. And you said the Inspector General of Police has been advised accordingly.
I don't understand what you are reading in that statement. You know, under the law, by the way.
I'm saying...
Under the law, let me say this. Under the law, and then let us not always go to things when they are convenient to us. The Minister for Interior actually has no powers over the Inspector General of Police. The law even prescribes that when you address the Inspector General of Police on any matter, you put it in writing. I've said before, and it's on record, for the entire time I was Minister of Interior, I wrote 2 letters to the Inspectors General, one to Boynet and one to Matiang'i. And before I sent the letters, I always ran them through the Office of the Attorney General for the AG's office to confirm whether these letters pass muster or they don't pass muster, as it were. So when I say the Inspector General has been advised accordingly, it means it just means exactly that you see the Inspector General has been advised to obey the law. And in most cases, by the way, when it comes to responses to riots and those kind of things, first of all, it's a matter discussed by the National Security Council. There has never been an incident, and I don't remember of an incident myself when I was Minister for Interior, when I communicated to the Inspector General of Police, independent of decisions that were made by the National Security Council. And the Inspector General sits in the National Security Council, as it were. The Attorney General would not allow me to communicate illegality.
This advice is from who?
When we say the Inspector General has been advised accordingly, it means the Inspector General has been advised to keep law and order, because that is responsibility by the National Security Council.
So the National Security Council could have advised the IG?
Yeah, but you see, advice does not mean the Inspector General has been told to go and kill people. I don't understand what you're
okay.
reading.
So therefore, the quelling of protests would emanate from that statement that you made?
You know, you're just overreading the statement, or you are reading your own things into it. Because you see, at all times, the Inspector General of Police is a member of the National Security Council. Everything about that is discussed at the National Security Council. In fact, the Inspector General provides a plan on what he or she would like to do in cases where we have a riot or we have a problem or a crisis of any kind. In most cases, we go with the plan that has been provided by the Inspector General. But you see, I don't know how it happens these days, but during the time I was in government, we had something we call the MAT, Multi-Agents Team, where security institutions sat together. The National Intelligence Service, the DMI, the Director of Military Intelligence, and the police would sit together and share information. The advice comes from this sharing of information, because, for example, if the Inspector General does not have enough information on these terrorist sleeper cells, which will be an intelligence matter, he takes advice from there. I mean, we all take advice. Okay. We will say the minister has been advised accordingly. It means the minister has been given the information he needs to act and to do the right thing, as it were. It doesn't mean that the minister has been told, now go and clamp down on these people, or whatever the case may be. And I honestly think you are just, any reading of that statement beyond what I've explained is essentially intended to be negative, and I honestly think that's what you...
Now to current issues. The current hold of the office that you held at the time, just last week, I'm sure you heard what he said in Kikuyu, that any protester approaching, or any person approaching a police station, shoot them. Is this an order you would give, whether publicly or quietly?
You know, first of all, I don't want to pass judgment on my successors in the ministry. In fact, the challenge you usually have when you have served in government, in particular positions and so on, is to keep the discipline and the respect for your successors and those who come after you.
Yeah.
I don't know how they operate, so I don't want to pass judgment on them, but every time we had a very seamless relationship between the security sector and the legal advisory services of government. Every time we acted or did anything, we always consulted with the Office of the Attorney General. There are cases without number that I remember in government when I would have liked to do certain things, but the Honorable Attorney General, first Professor Gideon Muigai, and later on retired Justice Kiara Kariuki, would say you can't do this because you have no powers to do this kind of thing. Yeah, and we always consult with the Office of the Attorney General. And actually, even where we went out, because sometimes, when you're out there in the field as a cabinet minister, you can take some decisions on the spur of the moment. And when later on, sometimes you're out there in the field, you're not even with the legal people and so on and so forth. When later on, it's discovered that, or when you come back to the office and even your legal team in the office tells you, Minister, this cannot work the way you did and so on, logically, or the Attorney General himself actually calls you up when they see it and they tell you this is it, what you said at this particular place or what you did at this particular place is wrong, and you don't have powers to do that kind of thing under the law. If that happens, as it were, they either revise the position, as it were, because people need to understand one thing: public officials are human beings; they are not God. You can make mistakes, as it were. So if the answer you want from me is yes or no, I wouldn't make that kind of order. Or saying shoot, kill, or whatever the case may be. But you see, again, as I said, I can't pass judgment on a context on which I don't have full facts about, as it were.
All right. What are your thoughts about, because we've seen a trend, guns are being deployed. We don't know by who, but we have seen them, especially in protests.
On this particular matter, in terms of security, the challenge we have in our country overall, politically speaking, is that it's a very low level of accountability in our political practice in the country. And what I mean by a low level of accountability is this: in addition to deployment of goons or whatever it is, as it were, the speech that we see from leaders and various actors within the political environment is sometimes very frustrating, as it were. On the case of deployment of goons, the government has got sufficient machinery and capability to address this particular issue. Honestly speaking, if I've explained this for a moment, I take it that this has not changed very much. In Nairobi, for example, we have the Nairobi security team, which is led by the regional commissioner in Nairobi. It brings the county police commander, the county DC officers and NIs and everybody and so on. I cannot imagine actually that this security infrastructure does not know that some is hiring or training goons to bring them to town to cause mayhem. I cannot imagine that that's the case. And if they have the information, then they should go forward and act. What I find very interesting in my view, and if I may be very frank with you, is making allegations are being made by public officials. They are the custodians of information because they are the ones who have the instruments of power and the capacity to find out who is doing what. You know, the way the National Intelligence Service works, I can't carry guns, drive with guns from Kisumu to Nairobi in my car, or how people bring in guns to me, and the National Intelligence Service does not know that Matiang'i is receiving guns or is engaged with some rebel guys in some corner and they are supplying guns. And then for them to wait until a particular time, then they say, oh, Matiang'i could be having guns. I find that very strange. Where were they when that was happening? And then it's their responsibility to know that the way this fellow is behaving, he normally has night meetings with people and he's recruiting these guns and so on. I don't want to pretend. I know for sure that the National Intelligence Service listens to our phone calls and so on and so forth. This happens. They have ways of collecting intelligence. So how is it that if they know that some is recruiting goons from Roysambu to bring them to Nairobi, why wait until the goons get to Nairobi? Because you have the capacity, you have the police in Roysambu, you will know that these people are being hired, they are being recruited in this particular house. So you go there and disrupt the matter. That is part of the security work. So again, on this particular matter, my honest view is that if indeed goons were hired by an individual and the government has got evidence that that has been done, then honestly speaking, it is right to act on that particular matter. But when action is not taken, as if I hired goons, for example, if there was a demonstration in Nairobi and I hired goons, myself, Fred Matiang'i, I hire goons, how can the government don't know that I'm trying to hire goons? And there is one of the reasons why I will not do it is because I know that by the second day, the government will know. They can even go trace money. I have moved money from this account. I've been paid by so and so and so on and so forth. They can trace that money. So my view is, if that has happened, and I've seen that being reported widely and so on and so forth, the question I ask is this. You know, we can engage in gossip, hearsay, he said this, I said, they allege and so on. Somebody needs to act. Okay. And then once action has been taken, we will all have facts to deal with.
Now, for the sake of accountability, so there's something you said in September 2017. It was in the lead up to the repeat presidential election. You were in Kisii, South Mugirango, and you said that anyone who is joking does not know Chinkororo. I am the Nkororo from this place. I am in charge of security. The youth who are here, if anyone tries to block you from voting, I can order the police to look aside and you rough them up.
That's a nonsensical thing. I can tell you it's a nonsensical thing that was reported out of context at that particular time. I explained it several times at that particular time when it happened. First of all, I was misquoted on that particular matter. It was reported out of context at that particular point, and even when political leaders from the opposition raised the issue, I faced them and explained to them what happened, and they were satisfied. They didn't have a problem with that.
So what did
I was even asked that question in Parliament, by the way. I don't understand why it's a non-issue. It was even raised in Parliament. Before a committee in Parliament, they asked me the question, and I explained to them. I told them, this is the context you have, this is the issue. I never said any of those things.
So what did you say?
By the way, because it happened in 2017, and it was one of those campaign moments. Yeah. First of all, I didn't say that because you have not a thug. That you know for sure. I didn't say that I'm a thug and so on. I can't quite remember the exact context in which it was, but the reporter who first of all I was speaking in vernacular. Yeah. The reporter who tried to report what I said in vernacular as it were, and he was not saying like go and rough those people up and beat them up and so on. Like, how can you say that on a minister for security? How?
I wish you could tell me what you said, because I don't understand your mother tongue, but you're denying what is transcribed.
But I think I will get the transcript of what I gave Parliament when I went before Parliament that particular time. But it was never like we find these people, rough them up and something like that. It was not that. Because I remember I went to Parliament on that particular issue, and when it was raised in Parliament, I explained it.
So what do you think of that organization? I don't know they exist anymore.
It's a very silly thing. That thing doesn't even exist. It's a proscribed organization. By the way, let me tell you the truth. You know, this is where we all go wrong. Media spends time on things that don't even matter. That organization doesn't even exist as I speak to you, and I don't remember when it was last proscribed. It wasn't even proscribed by 2 governments ago. It was proscribed by a government in the 60s and so on. So people like me who grew up around the 70s and so on didn't even have a chance of interacting with that organization.
You made reference.
It just became a byword, you know. I don't know. I mean, a byword that is used by people about to refer to, you know, rancor or something like that. It's like you can say Moran, you know, these are Morans, you know, these Morans and something like that. And if you were to go to communities which keep Morans and Moranism as it were,
right,
it doesn't exist in the manner in which it existed in the 60s and the 70s. There are people who are growing up these days who have never even seen those Morans.
Yet you made reference to it.
You know, Sam, that is actually a non-issue, to be honest with you. It's a completely non-issue.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a total non-issue. I mean, an issue that was dealt with, and I've never found anybody who cares about it, and who even cared about it at that particular time.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's your answer.